Welcome, welcome, welcome to today's webinar. Let me get this camera on. Setting up your business and partnering with M&T Bank and my partners at M&T Bank. Welcome to everybody here. Just as a little overview, this is intended, we're talking to business owners today. We're talking to startups. We're talking to people already in business and wanting to take it to the next level. And we're talking about those things that sometimes we don't like talking about or that sometimes can be scary. Namely, how to finance things, how to grow safely, how to grow responsibly, but how to grow in keeping with our dreams and our missions. So I have some great panelists today, James Patterson and Kimberly Austin from M&T Bank, both vice presidents, both leaders in what they do, and both very knowledgeable in how to inform you as business owners about how to take steps, the steps that you want to take next in your business. Whether you're just starting out, or whether you're already out there and you just want to take it to the next level. I can speak from personal experience in saying it is scary, but go ahead and lean into it because it's worth it. So I want to let the panelists introduce themselves. First, James. You're muted, James.
There we go. Good afternoon. I usually let Kim go first, but I'll go ahead and go first since you asked. I'm Jim Peterson. I'm a former serial entrepreneur who was fortunate enough to have a successful exit back in 2013 and began working for the city of Baltimore in the Small Business Resource Center, where I helped small businesses. Actually, I was tasked with going into communities and helping folks just kind of get the entrepreneurial spirit and in their own communities and building equity in their communities, et cetera. This was sometime around after the Freddie Gray incident, so you can see where it was pretty challenging at that time, but again, I embraced it. It was something that I've always done, it's been in my heart, and giving back and helping people grow businesses. And my partner at the time was M&T Bank. I had always banked with M&T Bank as a business owner. M&T came on as my partner, and eventually a couple years ago, M&T asked me to bring my talents to the minority and women-owned business team here at M&T Bank under Deidre Miller and alongside of Kimberly Austin.
Thanks, Jim. So there's a little bit of an echo. Do you hear that?
It went away.
Okay. So I'm Kimberly Austin. I am a vice president and relationship manager at M&T Bank. I have been in banking for 22 years, 11 of which have been with M&T. I did quite a bit of management and got the opportunity to meet with lots of business owners over the course of the time that I managed. And in the fall was awarded an opportunity to join this group, our minority and women-owned business team at M&T. So my sole purpose now is to just help businesses get started and help elevate them to the next level and create whatever success is what their vision is. So super excited to be here.
Wonderful. And I know you guys have a lot to say about access to capital, getting over fears and all of that. And I don't want to interrupt the flow of everything with my awkward questions. So I'm going to let you guys ping off each other a little bit in talking about these topics. Yep.
All right, so again, in terms of access to capital, we feel that any startup or existing business, it's important to have that banking relationship. That's what we try to stress, right? Because your banker is going to be not only just the person who's going to be able to position you to be able to get funding at some point, but they can be a great advocate for you inside and outside of the bank, right? All those people that you will need help from, and you will need help, right? I want to stress that you can't do it alone. We work with a lot of people, and we can more than likely introduce you to those folks, right? So we're certainly going to take care of you when it's time to borrow some funds. But we can be that connector for you. We can be that advocate for you. Many of us have, if not business experience ourselves, we have a lot of experience working with businesses, both on the smaller scale and the larger scale. So all those things that you're going to be facing, we can help you with. We've been there, we've seen it before. If we haven't, there's somebody on our team or somebody within M&T Bank that can assist you.
Absolutely. And with all businesses, I mean, you have to start somewhere. And the start of a business is just with the plan, just an idea. Making sure that, you've thought it through, who's gonna own the business. Are you gonna own it by yourself? Are you gonna have partners? Who's gonna run the business? It may be yourself. You may hire others. What is the product or service that you're offering? How is that going to be promoted and marketed? You have to think sort of through all of those things, and we in the banking world call that a business plan. So most businesses start with this business plan. If it's something that you're comfortable doing yourself, by all means attempt to do that, but also know that there are resources out there. The Small Business Development Center, which is in all areas of Maryland. You could start there. You could sign up and get the help with someone that works in that department. They can give you a template. They can tell you sort of the things that you need to make sure that you're keeping track of, as far as all the items, because there's a lot of items when you start a business. I mean, it's not just this plan, but making sure that you're registered properly, making sure you get a tax ID number, making sure that you know whether or not you need to incorporate inventory into your process. So there's a lot of steps that you need to really think through just before you even get started. On our team, Jim, as he said, worked with small businesses. I mean, he is Mr. Small Business himself. I like to call him that. He, for our clients, will also help review business plans. So if you've come up with something and you want something reviewed, and you're, a client of ours or a prospect of ours, by all means, he's willing to review those plans with you. If you are, looking to go to the next step, then you're going to want to engage professionals. You're going to want a banker. You're going to want an attorney. You're going to want an insurance rep. You're going to want an accountant. So all of those professionals, no matter what extent you need them, you do need them. So whether they're on call or whether they're part of the process, you really need to identify professionals to help you. So that's the main part. So that's getting yourself, organized from an idea to putting it into a plan.
Yeah, that's critical. Business plans are critical. I hope everybody understands that. That's something that you must have. This is your roadmap for running your business. And if you ever get off track, or if you're wondering if you're moving in the right direction, you always go back to that business plan and say, all right, well, we said we're going to be doing this and that, and we said we were going to be meeting these milestones and these benchmarks, and having these KPIs in place. And those are the things that you can always go back to that plan and make sure you're on track and doing what you said you were going to do. All right, and that professional help is key. All those folks, including your banker, your accountant, your insurance person, and your lawyer, they will keep you on track. So you have to build that team. It's the old African proverb, right? If you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, go with a team, right? So you want to build that team and make sure that you have those people in place, and not just the professionals, right? But people in that area where you want to be. If there's a particular industry that you want to be in, networking is key, right? Finding a mentor is a key. Find somebody who's been down that road before. You can make a lot less mistakes if somebody else has already traveled that road and made those mistakes for you, right? So find a mentor and have that person, hopefully you can find a good mentor that can share the ways that you can avoid the obstacles that they ran into, and avoid the mistakes that they made.
I just want to interject the idea that, when it comes to a business, whether it's a business plan or a growth plan, whether you're already in business and you're creating a growth plan, there's no, I hate to get stuck on the idea of right and wrong ways to do it, right? The idea is get it down on paper and get the thoughts out of your head so you can stay organized. But getting too hung up on it needs to look, perfect, and, the typeface and all of that stuff. Try not to get, hung up on that. Sometimes getting into action helps you actually develop it further. So I just want to say that, because I was one of those ones who had like notes and journal entries and all of those things, and it wasn't in a Word document per se when I started. But I will say this, that when I did start seeking funding, having an actual growth plan that was written out was necessary for the banks when I was seeking lending. Because when I started on my own, I was, let's just say, self-funded or, making ends meet. But when I did seek capital, with M&T Bank specifically, I had to have an actual plan in mind that I had to explain about how it was going to work and all that.
Yeah, and when we talk about plans, we're not talking about dotting I's, crossing T's, and using proper grammar. We're talking about you've thoroughly you've thoroughly put in the work to know this is my business, this is how I want to operate my business, this is how I want to grow my business. So when we talk about reviewing a business plan, we want to make sure that not only are you talking about all the positive aspects, but you've also identified what some of the obstacles can be and how you will overcome them. So that's what we want to know. We want to know not just how to grow it, but if you make mistakes, which it will happen, you want to minimize the opportunity for mistakes by thinking through what is it I need to do if this situation arises. So absolutely, Sahmra. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be a perfect business plan in the sense of what most would think we're talking about. It's really just the thought process of how you're going to continue your business in the event that something happens, both positive, because sometimes growing your business can cost a lot of money and you'll need access to capital in order to grow your business. But also we had a situation called COVID. It stopped a lot of businesses dead in their track, no matter what they planned for. COVID took that away. So, they still had to sustain through that, and thinking that through before it happens makes it a lot less painful than trying to kind of regroup in the middle of a disaster.
Yeah, and that's a good point. People are going to have to build in those contingencies, right? So those of us who were in business I know I was in business in 2001 and we had 9/11, right? So you had to deal with that and get over it. We had 2008, the great crash of 2008, the recession we went through. You had to deal with it, and you had to get through it and get over it, right? So those people who've been in business that long, they already knew that you got to build contingencies in. So those folks who have gone through this pandemic, going forward, that there could be something that happened. Nobody saw that coming. Right. But now when you're building your plan, you have to build that in. What if, right? What if there's another pandemic? What if COVID comes back? What if there's a recession? What if there's another world event like certainly a national event like 9/11? You gotta build those things in. People don't like to think about that, but that's part of it, right? Not just how you start and how you grow, but what happens if. You got to have those contingencies in there. And another good reason why you need to have this in writing is because, again, we're your advocate, right? That team that you're building, we're your advocate. We can't share your story the way you can share your story. I meet with so many people who talk to me on the phone for an hour, and now they want me to go out and be their, be their advocate, right? But I can't say it the way you say it. I can't present it the way you would like me to present it, right? I can present it, sure, I can tell somebody what you're doing, but only you can tell it the way that it should be told. So you have to put this in writing so that when I say, hey, listen, you need to meet this young lady or you need to meet this gentleman, I can say, let me send you their business plan and you tell me what you think, right? Rather than spending 10, 15 minutes trying to share, trying to remember everything that they said, trying to tell it the right way. Only you can tell your story. So you need to put that in writing so others can help share that and bring the resources that you need.
Absolutely. So I can just keep moving here, Sahmra, if that's okay.
Yeah, I was gonna, and in your business plan, I was thinking just in terms of what COVID has changed and defining not just where or who you're serving. You also have to think about where your employees are now. I think this is something that it's coming up more frequently. So the laws and your responsibilities with regards to employment now are going to depend on where your employee is. So if you're working with remote staff, keep that in mind, and that should be part of your plan and a potential liability, which I think we're going to get into later on as well.
Mm-hmm. So we've taken those ideas and dreams, we've put them on paper in the form of a plan, and then the next thing you want to do is we need some action. So we want to execute. We want to, that's when you're going to meet with the bank, get your account set up. You want to talk about funding if that's what you need to do in order to get yourself started. Not all businesses need that right out of the gate. but some do. And if funding is part of what you need from the beginning, then you want to have those conversations sooner rather than later. We want to be a part of that discussion just so we know what is it you're looking for. Are you looking to, buy equipment? Are you looking to hire staff? Are you looking to market? Are you looking to buy inventory? So there's a number of reasons why you would need funding. And what's most important here is that if you've been able to save and get yourself to the point where you could start a business, there's a lot of expenses that come out in the beginning. There's a lot of money that you're spending. And if it's possible, you always want to try, I say always, that's probably 98%. You always want to try to use someone else's money. There's different ways to finance, which I'll let Jim explain various ways to finance. But if you're coming to the bank for conventional, financing, we have the ability to, look at a package deal, take a look at the business plan, possibly approve the deal the way that it is with just the business owners, or maybe use some collateral, some assets as collateral. Or we also work with the SBA. We work closely with the SBA. SBA is great for startups, especially if you don't have the funding or you are dealing with something like maybe a less than ideal credit score, or you don't have the assets. There's a lot of risk that's out there when you're starting a business and you're asking for the funding. A bank looks at that as, if this business folds, how am I going to get my money back? So you need to identify all of those risks. You need to possibly use the SBA because they will help with securing this loan. And then you go from there. But like I said, there's a number of different ways to fund. You could do what's called a term loan, where you're borrowing the money up front and you're paying it back, sort of like a car loan, where you're given the money for something and you pay back principal and interest over a period of time. Or you may not need a lot of money in the beginning. You may just need a couple of months of expenses, and you could set up what's called a line of credit. And that would typically be used if you're gonna, use the funds for 12 months or less. We prefer you use a term loan in the beginning until we get some experience with the borrowers. But those are opportunities, and there's a slew of different lending choices out there, but they're the two of the most common ones. Jim can explain to you if bank financing is not what you're looking for, but there's a few other methods.
Yeah, so Kimberly mentioned the SBA, and I just want to be clear that the SBA is not a lender, right? She said they're going to guarantee the loan. So a lot of people think they just call up the SBA and ask for some money, and that's not how it works. So you still have to apply with a lender. You're going to have to apply with a bank. And then the SBA, again, if for some reason you may not have enough collateral, or your credit score isn't where it needs to be, or your business credit score isn't where it needs to be, then the SBA can come in and again be that guarantor on that loan to assist you. But they do not do the lending. And by the way, M&T Bank is the #1 SBA lender in the Mid-Atlantic and #7 in the country, right? So we know a little bit about SBA lending. But there are alternatives, a little bit, but there are alternatives, right? So if you cannot qualify for a bank loan, then there's options like like CDFIs around town, community development financial institutions who you might be able to borrow from. There's credit unions. There's a new form of lending. When I say new, I mean since 2008. Under the Barack Obama administration, where he allowed non-accredited investors to be able to invest in businesses, and that brought us crowdfunding, right? So there's platforms out there where it's called peer-to-peer lending, where you can create a campaign and folks who are not accredited investors or lenders, formal lenders, can invest in your business. So these are a number of ways that you can get funding for your business. And then there's always family and friends. Right, you got that family and friend round that we all tap into when we kind of start our businesses, and hopefully you have some family and friends who can invest in you and get that ball rolling for you.
Can you talk more about the peer-to-peer lending? Because I actually don't know that much about that, but I'm curious.
Yeah, that actually came, again, instituted by Barack Obama. It came under the, I forget what act that was. It was similar to the CARES Act. It was the act that came out in 2008. And what it did was it said that you did not have to be an accredited investor, right? Before that, only people who could invest in startup companies were accredited investors, which meant that you had to have a certain amount of net worth and so much liquid capital, typically $1 million worth of liquid capital, to be an accredited investor. And these were the only folks who were able to invest in businesses. But after this law was passed, now non-accredited individuals can invest in startup companies. And this is also what gave us like Cash App, right? So through Cash App and a number of other platforms, you can invest in stocks through Cash App, right? You can invest in, there's a bunch of platforms. I don't want to advertise for one particular platform, but on a number of these platforms, you can buy shares of stock. This law also allows you to buy a share of a stock, and rather than whole stocks, right? So it let normal average people who are not accredited investors buy shares of stock and also invest in companies in small ways and as little as $25, et cetera, on these different platforms. So it allows all of us to become investors.
I think that's a good place to just bookmark that, when it comes to formation, seeking advice from a legal professional and a tax professional is important, because how you form does affect who can invest in you. So corporations, S Corp versus C Corp, LLCs, some of them have limitations. And so there's benefits and drawbacks to forming in different ways, and investors is one of those things. I just want to point that out.
Absolutely. So you want to get some professional advice when you're getting started, because if you're looking to, again, expand and have some investors, you might want to choose one over the other. I'm not going to get into which one is best. You know better than I do. I know what I think. I know my opinion, but you know better than I do on the legal side.
Yeah, and I think it's an individual business decision, because there's also the issue of how you're going to get taxed. So whether you're going to have some pass-through taxing or you're going to get advice as a corporation, as an individual, does matter. But I think, that going back to the business plan and beginning with the end in mind, one of the things that, is part of a business plan can be an exit strategy. So where are you intending to go? Are you going to be holding yourself out for trading purposes, or do you need investors to be able to get involved later in the game? All of those things.
Yeah, and that's key. A lot of people don't want to think about that in the beginning, right? When I bring that up, all right, so what's the exit plan? They're like, I'm just getting started.
Right.
Right, I haven't even started yet. You're already talking about what the exit plan is. But you got to think about that. Like the contingencies we talked about, you got to think about what the end game is. And so many of us, and when I say us, I mean those who maybe didn't have a history of business owners in their family, right? You're the first business owner or one of few. We think we're going to start these businesses and own them for life and then hand it down to their kids. I certainly thought that when I had a successful business, after many that weren't so successful, right? When I finally got a good, successful business, I thought, well, of course, my kids are going to take over the business, and then their kids are going to take over the business. We're going to be the melons of the flooring business, but that doesn't happen, especially nowadays. Kids have so many opportunities nowadays, on the education side and other business opportunities that they have. It's actually highly unlikely that they're going to want to take over their parents' businesses. So you need to have some contingencies. I'm meeting a lot of folks now who are looking at co-ops, right? Selling the business to their employees, right? Because their kids don't want it, right? Again, their kids are doing other things, and some of them don't want to be business owners. And if they do, they want to own a different kind of business, right? Something in the tech space or whatever it is, but they don't want dad's business. They don't want mom's business. And now they have to come up with, are they going to put it on the marketplace and sell it to another company or another individual, or sell to your employees? And that's becoming popular now.
And this is all a healthy part of a conversation on estate planning, which is what I do. That's why I don't like the word estate when it comes to the planning. I like to say life planning because it's so misleading. But an estate plan or a successful succession plan can make sure that you don't end up with your business being run by a conservator if you're not here to do it, and winding things down in your absence and wearing down your legacy and the equity that you put into the business as well. And I can get more into that later, but we do have a question from the floor that I wanted to throw out to you guys before we get any further in the subject matter. From Lionel, if you're interested in starting a nonprofit, would all the advice, for example, does the SBA support nonprofit startups?
So Jim could probably answer that better, but I know that as far as starting the business itself, it is still the same process. There is an extra layer there to apply for the nonprofit status. So most of those nonprofits are started as organizations first, and then they apply for the nonprofit status. There's a lot more that goes into it, because generally when you have a business that is a nonprofit, it's essentially run by an executive director or an executor, and you have an executive board that oversees those actions. So there's a lot more that's involved. Borrowing money can be tricky because there really isn't an owner of the business, the entity being a nonprofit. So loans are typically, like banks want people to personally guarantee for loans, and since there are no personal guarantees when you have a nonprofit, it does get a little stickier. The bank does lend to nonprofits, but it does add a little extra complexity to it.
Yeah, it's still a business, right? So it's going to apply like any other business, but because it's not, because nonprofits are governed by a board, then we're going to want all of those people to sign off on the fact that they're trying to borrow money, right? Everybody has to agree. And we're going to want a significant amount of guarantors, right? It may not be the whole board, it may be just a director and some of the board, or in some cases, if you have, a 3-person board, it may be the whole board. But so it's a little more complex, but it's still a business, and it's going to apply like any other business. You still need all of those things that every other business is going to need.
And it's true that the SBA also has resources like mentors they're free of charge, right? And that would apply to anybody seeking that kind of advice.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yep. There are some very knowledgeable and experienced individuals that work for the SBA, and you can call them up. They have hotline numbers and 1-800 numbers, et cetera, that you can call and get some good information from those folks as well.
Is it resources? Sorry.
I was just saying, they have coaches that will meet with you and discuss things like this.
And is it resources just for Maryland overall, or does it break down into counties and regions?
Well, they have, it's Maryland overall, but they have different people who are located in different areas. So they are regional representatives as well.
And anybody listening, they should just Google SBA and kind of go from there, or do you have advice since you guys work with them so much?
Yeah, again, we each have friends that work with the SBA. So, I mean, if you want to reach out to us and ask who our friends are in the Baltimore area, we can certainly make some recommendations. But yeah, it's easy enough to just Google SBA and ask for some counseling or some coaching or somebody you can talk to in reference to your specific business or industry.
And if you're watching them, we've also shared with you some information about the team over at M&T, and that information are the email addresses for both Jim and Kimberly. So I just wanted to make a note of that if you're listening.
Excellent.
You can look at, if you were going to Google it, you could, if you wanted to just see what the SBA had in general. They have great like newsletters where they'll send out information. So, like for instance, I was on there about a week or so ago. They had some topics such as marketing your business. They'll have just like little webinars that you can sign up for, and you can get more information that way. It's great. It's a great resource. Just staying on that website, even if you don't need to involve the SBA, they're a good resource for all businesses. Yeah,
they do a lot of outreach too from time to time. Pre-COVID, we used to do a lot of personal events, but partnering with the SBA. Now I do a monthly roundtable with the SBA, as a matter of fact. So once a month, I do an access to capital roundtable along with the SBA. So You can look for that on their site or get on their mailing list.
I think even with hiring, when I was hiring last year, I was pointed in the direction of the SBA to, there was some kind of list of employer list or people seeking employment, that kind of thing, or job announcement type things.
Yeah, they have a lot of resources.
A lot of checklists. They have a lot of checklists, a checklist for everything.
Excellent. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about how to clearing the way for new employees, or things to think about when expanding in those ways? Since
we could talk. So growing a business. Yeah. So, we've talked a lot about starting the business, but what happens once you're up and running and things are good and you're, wanting to do more. So growing a business, that usually happens maybe for most businesses, maybe years 3 to 5. What you're doing is you've got your client base, you've got your staff, you've got your marketing down pat, and now you're trying to look for either ways to increase your production or look to add something else to what you're doing. So again, if you have the ability to, fund that yourself, you can. However, the banks do look to help people with growth plans. They're very similar to your business plan when you started. What this does is it tells us this is how we operate our business today, and this is how we intend to change it. These are the changes that we're making to our operating model. These are the products that we're adding, whatever it might be. And then we may ask for 3 years of projections. So we have a couple of years of tax returns that we're looking at for historical numbers, so we can see how you've run your business and how profitable it's been. But the projections we ask for, because that shows us with these changes, this is what we expect to make going forward. And sometimes there's a little bit of, there could be additional expenses the first year or two with growing your business. So we want you to incorporate those expenses as well as that increased sales amount. So, that could, again, like most businesses, it could not be profitable. That growth plan might take another 2 to 3 years to be profitable. So it can cost a bit of money when you're moving from startup into growth. And if you are looking to leverage funding, generally it's a little bit easier at this point because we do have those historical numbers to look at. And generally you've been dealing with your financial institution for a couple of years, so they've learned your story. They're a better advocate for you at this point. You've engaged all the professionals usually at this point. It makes it a much smoother ask when you're looking at increasing.
So where a lot of people get tripped up is when it comes time to hire, is that they haven't fully thought out the whole hiring process, right? So going back to that business plan, oftentimes what's going to be included in that is an org chart, right? You got you, and then you got whoever the person under you is going to be, and the person under them, and if you have some production and sales, and people work through that just because it's part of the template, right? You get your business plan template from the bank or from the SBDC or from SCORE or from the SBA or whatever. And then you work through that, and they ask you for an org chart, and you put yourself at the top, and then I'm going to hire this VP, and then I'm going to hire a CEO because I'm just going to be chairperson. And I'm going to hire my sales, and you fill in the blanks, but you haven't really worked through what exactly are these folks going to do, right? What is the job description of your VP? What is the job description of your head of sales? What exactly are those folks going to do? So now you're in year 2 or 3, and it's time to hire that VP, or if you just want to be chairperson, you want to hire that CEO. What exactly are their roles, right? What do you want to give up? Because right now you're doing everything. What is it that you're going to give up that these people are going to do? Even on a smaller level, I see so many people who are hiring like personal assistants. They're like, oh, I'm so busy, I'm doing so much, I need a personal assistant. And they put a job posting up, hiring a personal assistant, right? And they hire that person, and now that person's trying to figure out, all right, well, what am I doing? All right, and you're going back and forth. I've seen it all the time. I know I'm not the only one, right? I've been there, as a matter of fact, where there's certain things that as an owner, you want to do, right? You want to give somebody all the things you don't want to do. right? But you got to think that through. Imagine giving somebody all the crap that you don't want to do, right? How many people actually want to do that, right? So you're giving them the job, and now you're giving them all the dirty jobs, all the crap that you don't want to do, and you expect them to like it, right? Just so you got to think that through. You have to build these job descriptions out, right? Make it attractive for somebody to want to actually do the job, right? Work out how much you're going to compensate that person for doing these jobs. And especially now, since the great resignation, right? It's hard to get individuals to do these crappy jobs that nobody else wants to do, right? Whether that's, being an assistant or working on, and against, in my industry, I was in the flooring industry, right? How many people want to be on their hands and be putting in flooring, right? It's difficult. You have to think these things through. What are you going to offer these folks to make them want to do these jobs and continue doing these jobs, whether it's more pay or certain kinds of benefits or, some perks within the company. I'm seeing companies now add things like beer on tap, right? And flexible work schedules and work from home and virtual working and things like that. You got to really think through what that job is going to be able to get people to apply and want to stay. The culture of your business is very important, right? Nowadays, things are totally different than they were in the 70s and 80s, right? You have to think about work-life balance for these employees and compensation. The best employees I ever had, I had to steal from somebody else. So you're paying $1, but for me, to know who's the best employee, you have to look at their track record, right? And if they're killing it for somebody, we were always stealing salespeople. So if they're killing it for somebody else, they know the business, they know the industry, and why can't they kill it for you? You just offer them something that the other guys aren't offering.
And in a lot of industries too, I mean, not every industry is going to need you to put something together that's kind of formalized, but there are business coaches out there that when you're ready for growth, you could consult with them and they can walk you through what that would look like. They can walk through and define those roles that Jim was so graciously sharing. They can define what those tasks would be. So what would be fair to pay someone to do these jobs? Let's put it on paper and actually post this as a rec. So, you don't have to do all those things on your own, especially when you get to the growth phase. You hire professionals to do that sort of stuff only because you do what you do well, but let the other people on your team do the thing that they do well. And, whether it's helping you with financing or helping you with, defining certain operational aspects of your job, there are people that can help you with all of that. In addition to marketing, let them do that. Let them help you with bookkeeping. Those things you get to a point where you can't do it all and you shouldn't try. Most people that we all consider to be successful in whatever that means, they don't do everything on their own. They have a team. So whether it's their professional team, like we were speaking of before with your financial professionals, or if it's with your operational professionals, let them help you. That definitely helps. And when it comes to hiring, it can be expensive. Sometimes you need to pay sign-on bonuses to get good people, or you might need to pay top dollar. You can ask for financing to hire people. So if you're in a service-based business and you don't have inventory, so say you're Sahmra and you're an attorney and you want to have 2 additional paralegals on your team, you could come to the bank and you can say, I want to hire these professionals, and this is how they're going to help me generate more income because I'm going to be able to give them these tasks. And then I'll be able to have billable hours or whatever your industry is. You could bring people in, you can show the bank how bringing those people in can help your bottom line, and the bank will finance that. That is definitely something that we do a lot. We help businesses with increasing their staff by financing it. It's a big amount to just pay someone, $30, $40, $50,000 when you haven't done it before. So, let the bank help support that by making payments, therefore you're making payments instead of just making that salary the first couple of years until you can get that revenue up to where you need it to be.
And Kim, in fact, that's exactly what I did when I approached M&T Bank. It was about hiring a client service director. So we were trying to expand and create a new role to take some of the weight off of me. And so that's exactly why we sought funding with M&T. And it turns out we were able to support that role without having to dip into that. And so that funding became a resource for further training for me and for staff and myself. And so, yeah, that's important. And I also just want to add, from a legal perspective, hiring new talent also means bringing on new liabilities. So you need to think about how these potential new employees can possibly hurt you or your business, and kind of map out what things you need to put in place, whether that's technology and backup systems, or what devices you're going to be allowing them to use, or what networks they're going to be accessing that are proprietary information. All of those things need to be thought out. And we do business coaching. So that's the perfect thing that you could talk with a business coach about, whether that's a hired one or one through the SBA. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And, there's another phase here that we're talking about, and we hope we all get to, and it's been mentioned a couple of times, but what happens at the end? What happens when you're tired of being a business owner? So you have a couple of options. You could try to sell your business. You could put it on a market. There's actually there's business brokers out there that will help you determine what the value of your business is. They can help you market selling that business. You could pass your business down to a family member, as Jim said. That you might want to talk to your kids about that early on, because you might find that that's not going to be an option for them. So, making sure you're having those discussions early, so you know whether or not you're going to need to sell your business or do something else. So those are a couple of the ways. Or you could just decide to just retire, and some people do that. If you have the ability to sell, assets, or sell clients, or, do those types of things, you can. So you want to make sure that no matter what you do, that everything you have is not invested in that business. So you want to make sure that you're properly diversified. You want to make sure that you're properly covered as far as liability goes. There's a lot that goes in on the back end when you're ready to be done. So make sure you're, again, consulting those professionals to talk about what that looks like.
And we have a question from the floor, actually. What is your advice about purchasing an existing business as your first business?
So if the existing business, we do that a lot. So someone will decide that they want to sell something. Say I have a sandwich stand and it's been pretty successful, and then Jim wants to buy my sandwich stand. If I've already proven that I have an operating model that works, and I've been able to produce income year over year, I have a positive net income, it makes it favorable for Jim to buy my existing business as the sandwich stand rather than for him to start one up. Because what we're doing is we're showing that we're just transferring ownership as opposed to the risk of starting from scratch. So it's definitely beneficial if you can buy an existing business that is definitely turning a profit. If you're buying a business that's struggled a little bit, but you know that there are ways that you can change it by tweaking the operating model or adding people to the business, you can hire folks to correct whatever some of the issues might be. Then you could also, you could go in and kind of restructure. You can use the experience of the previous business for the new business. I would say more times than not, that's beneficial rather than starting a new business.
Yeah, I'm going to say do your research both on what Kim was talking about, knowing their numbers, the projections would apply here too in terms of what you're going to do once you own it, and then know your competition, know what else is out there, and have a plan in mind, including an exit strategy.
And another thing here, if you're going to buy someone else's business, you may want to do a little research to make sure that they ran their business properly. So that has happened from time to time where someone is escaping their business. So you definitely want to, if you have someone that can do that research for you, or you can do the research, you want to make sure, there are no liens out there that you're unaware of, or that, they did everything ethically.
Are there any telltale signs that you guys have seen for someone fleeing their business?
Absolutely. As if, well, first of all, as an attorney, the differences where you can buy the business or you can buy the assets of the business, right? So you can get around that by just buying the assets and you're not buying the business itself. But yeah, the telltale signs are if they're waffling on showing you the books, right? They're telling you all the money they're making and everything looks great. And you say, well, let me see your finances. And, all right, well, let's not worry about that, right? You can see I'm making money, right? You hear that. Look, we got this and we got that, and this one likes it, and that one likes it. Things can look rosy from the outside. I've seen a number of businesses. Like every business I look at, I consider it as if I'm buying it. Right? Every business plan that I read, every business that I look at from the outside, anybody comes to me for advice, I consider it as if I'm going to buy it. And a lot of things look rosy on the outside. But once you get on the inside and you start looking at those finances, it's pretty ugly sometimes.
So you'd want to ask for tax returns, and if possible, validate the tax returns. You could also do a UCC search to see what liens have been placed against the business. When we as an institution give a loan to a business, we do a UCC filing. So it will determine, it lets other financial institutions know that those assets have sort of been pledged, even if we don't really take the assets. That we put kind of a blanket lien out there in the event that the client defaults. So you could do this UCC search to see what liens have been placed out there. If they have a lot of liens out there, you might want to ask questions. Make sure that you understand that there are loans out there that are outstanding, and you want to know how those loans are going to be taken care of.
Yeah, one easy way of knowing what's going on is just ask, do you have a CPA? Right? Do you mind if I have a conversation with your CPA, or can we have a conversation together, right? And hopefully that person is going to be forthright. But if they say, no, I don't have a CPA, I've been doing this on my own, that's one red flag. And then you ask how you manage in your books, right? And if they don't say something like QuickBooks or Peachtree or something you can recognize, then that's another red flag, right? If they say, oh, Excel spreadsheets, yes, some people are pretty good with Excel spreadsheets, but most people really aren't. And Excel spreadsheets really aren't going to give you the reconciliations that you need with bank accounts and things that, records of invoicing and profit and loss statements and balance sheets that are real legit business needs, right? So you want to be careful if they don't really have something in place, and if they're not working with a professional. But it is typically easier to get funding if you're buying an existing business, especially if it's a franchise, right? So we have a list of they're not, what is it called, Kim? They're not really partner organizations, but we have like a working list of franchises that we're comfortable with, right? And
we've vetted, yeah, and in many cases we've vetted those franchises, or we've either vetted them and they're new, or we have experience with some of our business owners that own those franchises. So we've done a lot of work to understand how it is that they operate. And franchises, believe it or not, M&T loves franchises, especially successful ones, because that operating model has already been hammered out. And those folks that are starting that business have to follow a lot of criteria to keep that name on their business. So, we love franchises.
Right. Could someone reach out to get a list of those franchises, or is that private information? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I don't think we share it, but again, if you're talking about a well-known franchise, they're probably on our list, right? Again, M&T has a lot of clients, so if you're talking about something that's well-known, somewhere along the way, we've probably financed one of those deals and know how it operates, right? So we're not reinventing the wheel here. So as you do with many startups, people are creating stuff that's brand new. There's no history there. There's no track record. And more importantly, there's no formation. There's no template to follow, right? You're kind of winging it, kind of building the plane as you're flying it. And that's risky, and banks don't like risk.
Yeah, and just to give you some industries, like for franchises, I personally have dealt with dry cleaners that are franchises, restaurants, just trying to think of a couple. I know that
Yeah, we have a bunch of Rita's Water Ice. We have a bunch of like Subways and stuff like that.
sports equipment, like, so, there's quite a few. And if you're buying into a really well-known franchise, we have different levels of banking here at the bank. So, we typically support businesses that are up to 15 million a year in our group. But if you're buying into something that's even larger, we have specialized groups for that.
Are you looking for buyers of franchises that have business experience, or is that relevant to your critique?
So it doesn't necessarily have to be. I'm dealing with one now that is a fairly new franchise. There was just a lot of additional questioning that happened between the franchise group itself, the buyers, and the bank, just for clarification, because some of those things haven't been ironed out yet. But yeah, it doesn't have to be an existing franchise.
But the owner, again, the person buying the franchise, it helps if they have some history in that space, right? So often you have folks who are buying franchises that they have no idea, they've never worked, you're buying a restaurant, you've never worked in a restaurant, you have no relative experience, you're an accountant and now you're buying a restaurant. We hope that it makes sense, at least, right?
So if we had, and sometimes people have dreams of something completely different than what they've done before. And in those cases, a lot of times we'll ask for a resume. We'll ask, do you have experience, do you have experience in these particular scenarios? Because while I'm a banker, I might want to open a French fry franchise. And while I've never made French fries, there's a lot of things about running a business I will know. So we just try to tie those experiences into what you're doing. And your resume is probably the best way to do that. So a lot of times we'll ask for the owner's or the buyer's resume, just so we can kind of tie that into the plan.
Right. And that can come back to your team too, right? So you may be an accountant opening a restaurant, but on your team is the head chef of so-and-so restaurant for 20 years, right? On your team is somebody who ran the front of house for a well-known restaurant. So on your team is somebody who ran the back of house for some well-known restaurant. So you can build that experience into your team, even if you don't have it. Right. So we want to see that it makes sense. Not necessarily that you have that experience, but at least somebody on your team has that experience.
Absolutely.
And we have a comment, and we're coming up on the top of the hours. Lionel just said, thank you very much. This has been very helpful. I think it's been a great webinar. We are coming up on the top of the hour. I do want to just touch on any comments you guys might have on overcoming fear and approaching a bank and, seeking out that lending that you guys have been talking about this afternoon.
Yeah, you want to go first, Kim? Yeah.
Absolutely. I know from dealing with, business owners for 20 plus years that while you're very confident about whatever your product or service is, everything else can be very, very scary. So just, knowing that you have people that you can go to and talk to without pressure, you're looking for guidance and education, and that's a big piece of it. It's going to be scary. Everything's going to be scary, especially the first time you do it, but it gets easier. So, a lot of this scared, the scaredness that you feel has maybe been passed on to you through your parents or your grandparents. And, this is something that maybe someone in your family's never done before. So, just knowing that there are people that you can talk to and talk through the situation with is super helpful.
Yeah, we're just regular folks, right? We're just like you. And oftentimes some of us have been where you are. I know I certainly have. I enjoy talking to people who have those fears because I want to let them know that they shouldn't be scared. And what I try to do is help them find those mentors, help them find those folks who are in the business that they're in, and have been there for some time that they can talk to. Right, and we'll have a Zoom conversation, or when we get to the point where we can all go out for coffee again, we sit around the table and they can ask all the questions they want of these folks, right? So I know a lot of business owners. I'm a former SCORE mentor, so I might connect you with a SCORE person who's been in that industry, and you'll just see that they were just like you, right? They ran a successful business at some point, but they started out just like you, and there's no reason to be scared. You know, you're going to make some mistakes. It's going to be all right. You know, you just stick with it, and everything will be all right.
Absolutely. And my advice would just be to lean in, ask those questions, and lean into the fear, and good things will come. This has been a great presentation. We've reached the top of the hour. I just want to thank both Jim and Kim. And this will not be our last meeting, I'm sure. So keep your eye out for future announcements about just this type of webinar if you've enjoyed this. The information to contact either Jim or Kim has been sent to you, and we'll resend it again after the webinar as well. And just thank you guys, and have a great afternoon.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.